This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, the Republican voice of the South Shore. Today I thought we'd salute George Dekas, who's a former member of the president of the Plymouth County Bar Association, longtime member in longtime legal counsel of the town of Middleborough, a longtime member of the Republican State Committee. George had been sick with Alzheimer's for a number of years, and he just recently passed away. He was a class act. He was a graduate of Yale Law School, University of Penn, went to undergraduate at Yale, a brilliant lawyer, a connoisseur of fine art, especially when it involved the town of Middleborough. Restored some of the old historic homes in Middleborough personally, paid for them. George is one of the Dekases from Wareham. They own, I think they owned Ocean Spray, one of the major developers of cranberries. George will be missed. I am sorry it took him so long to pass with the terrible disease that he had. It took him years to, finally let go. He was a fighter. He fought for what he believed. He was on the Judicial Nominating Committee, which nominates judges in Massachusetts, and he was the chairman of this region for William Weld. He served in that capacity from 91 to 96. We salute his efforts. He was a stalwart of the Republican Party. He continuously gave. He continuously helped. His cousin was Sheriff of Plymouth County, Charlie Dekas, and long-term state rep out of Wareham. The Dekases have contributed greatly to the community in Wareham, and they've tried to make a difference. George always counted on making a difference. He maintained a residence in Athens, Greece, that we used to auction off all the time for people who were going to Greece to stay there. He gave freely of donations, and so those were the good things that George did. He contributed. He has written a number of books on Middleborough. He was an author. His office was on the main street of Middleborough, right near the old main building of the Middleborough Trust. He was, it's across the street in that old building that he restored. I was captain somebody's house, and I cannot remember, and I apologize for that. But he was a great collector. He made a difference. He fought hard. He did everything he could to restore a balance, a political balance in Massachusetts. He always was concerned that one party shouldn't dominate everything so heavily. Well, may he rest in peace. His services is on Sunday. He has his sister still alive, and his one brother is still alive. But most of the Dekases now have passed on. His mother was a great person who they really fought for what they believed, and they came from Greece and built a big fortune here in the United States. So we salute his hard work and what he accomplished in life. Anybody that knows George can call in today and reminisce about George. He was a fighter. You always knew where you stood with George. He never backed away from a fight, and I have to say for the record, when I was treasurer and vice chairman of the Republican Party in the state, George was one of my key supporters. So I will miss him. I can be reached at 508-822-1106. We have some interesting elections coming up in the country. The Chicago's mayor's race is coming up. I predict Daley will pull it out and be the next mayor of Chicago. And the name Daley is just synonymous with Chicago politics. I think he is surging in the polls, in the latest polls in Chicago, and I would think that he will now go on to bigger and better things.
They haven't been getting the media lately, though. All the media in Chicago is all talking about R. Kelly, and they're talking about Jussie Smollett as well.
Oh, Jussie Smollett really did a horrendous thing to orchestrate an attack on himself. Maxine Waters, the Democratic congresswoman, is defending him, saying, how do we know it really didn't happen, that the police are setting him up? Well, there's been a thorough investigation, and he paid the people to attack him. That was done just to embarrass President Trump. That is really a low thing to do, and it talks about someone not being too balanced. And that's a very bad thing when you're not balanced. You set somebody up to attack you and then blame it on the president's supporters. Shame on him and shame on the liberal media. And they all came to him and said it was outrageous. Kamala Harris from California. Oh, God save the country if that woman is elected. She's an extremist of the worst order. And they believe in all this stuff. It is an extreme position on everything that they take, and that's not going to help America. You know, the foundation that made America great with individual achievement, less government regulations, therefore more government regulation, more government investigations, more government investigative agencies. My God, is that the America that people want to live with? We have a new elder law that has come into place in Massachusetts. Now the banks don't want to lend on elders' houses because of the law. The law was ill-conceived and passed by the general court. A simple allows an agency of the state to stop the sale of a house if they don't agree with it. Why isn't that left to family decisions? Why would banks, which they tell me Bank of America leads the list of complaining about its own clients to the agency, and so that they can assume hold on to their money. The worst bank in the New England is the Bank of America to deal with. I heard all the comments that you gave last week. I had 2 weeks ago, 121 calls. I recorded them. 91 people had negative impressions of the Bank of America. It's unbelievable. Where's the banking commissioner? Why doesn't he step in and do something to the Bank of America if it's out of control like that? It should be. It's a privilege to operate a bank, not a right. You know, I don't agree with Senator Warren on many things, but the breakup of the banks is something I'm beginning to agree with. They are out of control. Bank of America thinks your money is their money. That just isn't the case. Break it up. Maybe if the regulators, I read something and I was appalled by it. They were having a hearing, one of the chairmen in the House next week, on something on bank regulation. She has a fundraiser the night before, or he does, I think it was he, a fundraiser the night before with the Bank of America. Now tell me there's going to be any good legislation that comes out of that thing after the bank is holding a fundraiser from. Come on. Common sense would tell you they're trying to buy off the investigation before it happens. It shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't be allowed to do the fundraiser. It should be regulated. Nancy Pelosi talks one way, and she doesn't enforce the rules. Why was that member of the Democratic Party allowed to hold a fundraiser with the Bank of America and then have a hearing concerning the Bank of America? Who is Nancy Pelosi kidding? To the public. She thinks everybody's dumb? Well, I don't. So those were some of the things. It seems to me that the special interests are controlling government more and more. The cost of running keeps going up. The new Republican state chairman said to me he spent $190,000 and lost his reelection campaign. The Democrats pumped in for state rep over $350,000. That's absurd. If we're going to spend that kind of money on those races, how can the normal person get elected? That is the price of a house. What they're spending. And that's not good politics. It's bad politics in the long run. But I did want to get back to saluting George D, because anybody that has an opinion on or dealt with George knew he was a class act. He was somebody that got back to people, tried to help, make a difference. He was the town council in Middleborough for 36 years, which is a lifetime. He handled all the legal problems for the town of Middleborough. He was on top of it. He kept the town fairly clean for all those years. He made sure that there were no long-term litigation battles for the town. He held the costs down. An individual like George Deacus is irreplaceable. And, of course, I don't know who the new town council is. Joey, do you know who new the town council in Middleborough is now?
I've seen him on TV, Board of Selectmen meetings. I don't remember his name. I can look that up.
Why don't you look it up and let us know? George was the town council, and then he came down with this disease. I think it was 2003. He had to resign from everything, and he's been sick with it for 16 years. And he's needed aides. He's needed people to help him. Alzheimer's is a terribly debilitating thing for the family to see somebody pass away like that. They have to go through stages, and then their memory goes, they don't even know who anybody is. Poor George. He didn't deserve what he got. And the problem is it's probably hereditary, and Alzheimer's seems to skip a generation in the family and then reemerge next generation after that. So it's a sad state of affairs. Hopefully, people will remember all that George contributed to the community. He served in a lot of volunteers places. He was on the planning board in Wareham. He was the president of Plymouth County Bar Association, a member of the Republican State Committee. He was legal counsel to Middleborough. He had a private law practice. He did a lot with Ocean Spray, the cranberry. They own cranberry bogs. The Deacuses are or were Wareham during their day. The family was large. It was a Greek immigrant family that came from Athens. George maintained a condominium for years in Athens that he would go back and spend a month every year in Athens just to enjoy what was going on and getting back into his Greek roots. And he would auction off his condo for charity so people would have a place to stay when they went. George was a class act. And we salute him. We salute what he did. We salute his accomplishments. He was a loyal alumnus to Yale and the University of Penn Law School. He was a good and sometimes brilliant legal scholar. He understood the issues. He understood the issues very quickly. He grasped legal concepts very quickly. He should have gone on. He should have been someone that ran for Congress. He had the brilliant mind to have solved some of the problems in America. Well, may he rest in peace. We salute you. We will be down to the service tomorrow. We pray that the Deacus family gets through this trying period. But remember, he's in a better place now than what he was going through. Dementia takes away all your dignity, and I feel bad for him. He started losing what he had, and that is sad to see. Well, hopefully we will see George rest. May you rest in peace. May God be with you, and may you return to happier grounds. That was our salute to George Deacus. We're going to take a short break for the advertisers, and we'll be back with you.
is still time to clean up and clean out, and the company that could do it for you is DK Driscoll Removal Services. You can reach them at 508-725-2334. They remove construction debris, metals, railroad ties, tires, appliances, paints, and much, much more. Like concrete, brick, asphalt, yard removal, brush, logs, and leaves. Also, basements.
This is Larry Novak, the Republican voice of the South Shore with Politically Speaking. And I wanted to discuss some of the upcoming things that will be going on. The ward and town committees need to be formed for both Democratic and Republican parties. The papers come out, I think it's August 6th of this year. You have 90 days to collect the signatures to get members elected onto those committees. The committees should be looking for new members. It brings the vitality of a political party back to life. It adds new people. They go on and do the battle for the 4 years after that. They vote for candidates running for statewide office. They nominate them in both political parties at their convention. You are not able to go on unless you receive 15% of a convention vote of those activists. You cannot your name cannot go on the ballot in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts unless on a statewide office unless they endorse you. If they do not endorse you, you're barred under the law from running. That is called the Buckley decision, and it was done under Governor Dukakis sued, and the state Supreme Court said the party rules do govern nomination process. So you need to look to organizing them. You need to fill them up, and then you need to elect during that same period the state committee man and woman for each political party goes on the ballot in that district. They determine the policies of the party, and if the party is going to be a party open door, closed, or not. They determine the political philosophy of the party. Is it going to be a left-wing, right-wing, moderate? They're the ones that do that actually take that role. In the last time on the Republican side, Governor Baker spent over $1 million helping Republican state committee candidates that he supported. He purged anybody that supported Donald Trump at one point. He didn't want them on the Republican State Committee. He went out and organized and funded a challenge to them and purged them. And understand, he's the titular head of the Republican Party and, in the state because he's the highest elected Republican, that's his role. Elizabeth Warren probably, I don't know this, probably supported candidates on the Democratic side. That's how it's usually done. They determine the policies on who gets the nomination, the members of the ward and town committee, to advance to a primary. They determine if two people are running and they give 90% of the vote at a convention to one candidate, the other candidate is denied access to the ballot. Under the Buckley decision, the Supreme Court of Massachusetts ruled that the political party can deny anybody it wants access to the ballot at the statewide level. I think if you took that decision a little bit further and took it all the way down, you could actually probably write rules that determine that unless the legislature overturned it, that who would be the state Senate candidates. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party is looking at that option, that they will be able to shut down the primaries, and only people that they support would be then nominated. which is an interesting concept. In the Republican, it hasn't come up. There will be hotly contested seats on those Republican primary things. You need to raise and spend money. You need to have name ID. The person with the highest name ID that usually comes from the largest community wins. It's a geographic thing. Somebody that comes out of Brockton usually holds the second Plymouth Bristol seat. Because Brockton is so overwhelming both on the Republican primary and on the Democratic primary. A person, the last time there was nobody on the Republican side running on the as a state committee man, so it went by default to somebody to Hanson. But anybody that runs out of Brockton, unless that incumbent, because incumbency does help in this, it's a low visibility office, would have a very difficult time holding the seat because of the geography involved. And in Brockton, there will be a challenge on the Republican side to Alan Green and the Ward 3 committee. A group of dissidents, as I understand it, is going to form its own group of candidates to challenge Alan's leadership role in the Republican City Committee in the Ward 3 area. And I would imagine they'll run their slate, we'll run our slate, and it will be a battle. But it will be an interesting battle and a discussion of ideas, a discussion of where the parties should go, what's wrong with the Republican Party in the state. It fails to run candidates. That's what's wrong. It fails to raise money. It fails. Even years ago when the Democrats were the minority in Massachusetts, and it goes back to the 50s, they always ran candidates. The role that the Republicans should take is look at what the Democrats did to achieve majority status and copy it. They ran candidates for every office and or competitive. You know, they outraised Republicans fairly handily in Massachusetts, and by not running candidates, your registration continues to drop. And you want to get your registration numbers up because it encourages candidates. When the wards and town committees are filled, it encourages other people to run because they feel they'll get help from the people that associate with that party. They do. Those are areas of concern. It's just not the philosophy. It's that grassroots that makes the philosophy. If a group of Weldites took over the Republican State Committee, you'd see a different philosophy. If they take over, if Weld is able to organize and get his people elected to the town committees, they'll write different rules that will deny President Trump maybe ballot access or something. Those are the rules, and control of those things, why they're important. They write the rules. They determine who's going to be on the ballot. Now, the general court could overrule that, but then there would be court challenges to it, and it would take years for a determination to be made. Nothing moves swiftly in the courts. It takes a while. It's done deliberately so it can be analyzed without a rash decision that's going to affect mankind for years to come. Those are some of the issues that we're facing. The Taunton City Committee and here in Taunton will need to be organized, both the Democrat and Republican sides. The goal is to get 35 people per ward to join the town and ward committees. They then promote Democrat and Republican principles, and they go out and knock on doors, put up lawn signs, and try to get people to assist and to believe in a common goal and philosophy. If those people get elected and they don't believe in Trump, they will write rules that make it much harder for Trump to get elected in Massachusetts. It's the control of the organization does matter. They will write rules maybe more favorable to Warren to get her the delegates for her presidential run. They control ballot access. They're going to control who's going to run in those primaries. On the president's side, the Secretary of State can also list anybody he wants on the ballot by mention in the paper. Or he can devise criteria to get on the ballot. You do not have to usually get signatures in Massachusetts if you're a presidential candidate. All other candidates have to. You need to get signatures, and those people go out and do that. For governing, you need 10,000 certified signatures to get on the gubernatorial ballot after a convention either gives you 15% of its delegates. So when the Lively Baker race, the reason why people were discussing it is that Lively got over the 15% needed to go on the primary ballot. Then if they had been able to shut him off at the convention, he wouldn't have been given ballot access, and there would have been no expense for the governor for a primary fight. That's why those races are important. That's why the town and ward committees matter. That's why it's the rawest form of politics. They meet, they have to meet by statute quarterly. They get together and discuss where the party should go, the philosophy of the party, and what they think is going to happen. The state committee chooses the president electors and gives them to the House and Senate here. They're the votes that go to the Electoral College and vote for the president. I was one, I think, in '84 when Reagan did it. And you're called the honorable the rest of your life for doing that. Members of the Electoral College are important because they determine how a state's going to vote. In 1980 and '84, President Ronald Reagan carried Massachusetts. He's the last Republican, I think, that did carry the state, in the presidential election. Reagan won in '80 against Jimmy Carter in Massachusetts, and he won again in 1984 against Mondale. He carried the state. People liked Ronald Reagan in Massachusetts, and they voted for him. The Boston Globe almost had a conniption because Reagan wanted them to vote for Ray Shamey, and he endorsed Ray Shamey and told them to vote the ticket. Reagan was extremely popular, and the Boston Globe at the time thought that Reagan might carry in the candidate against John Kerry. So they did everything humanly possible to help John Kerry. They were at that time the premier newspaper in New England. So when you look at these things, and somebody asks you to join a water town committee, think about it. It's raw politics. It's like the old town meetings where people would get together and vote on an issue to build a new school, which we see less and less happening. The younger generation isn't as engaged in that. So, I mean, we will see fights for these positions. We will see fights. I only can speak with thing probably in the city of Brockton. The Ward 3 will be the area of the highest fight. Alan Green's going to have 35 people on the ballot because, as I understand from somebody, there was an opposing slate that will challenge his slate. He needs to go out and organize that ward. Ward 1, I think there will be only one slate, and I could be wrong, and I'm putting that slate because I'm the chairman of Ward 1 Republican City Committee and the city chairman together. I would think that I intend to drop people that don't show up at meetings and don't ever participate. They're just taking up a seat, and we need active members, and the committee wants to drop some of the deadwood on the committee. So we will be seeing a change in the makeup of these political committees, and hopefully they'll get organized. Plimpton will get organized on both Democratic and the Republican side. It's very interesting. In the town of Plimpton, I think everybody's that's elected is an unenrolled voter. All the selectmen, the planning board, everybody is unenrolled. It's fun. I was shocked when I saw those statistical data. That means that neither political party appeals to the people of Plimpton. They now believe more in the on the road status. So it's a great thing. Let us hear, do you think Alan Green should be replaced as Republican chairman in Ward 3? Give us a call at 508-822-1106. And at the end, in a short period of time, we're going to take, since we inundated rating of the banks again, you can reach me by email. I will give you that next week. We're going to rate the banks and send out a survey as to fulfilling need. And we're going to forward that survey on to the banking commissioner. If you feel the Bank of Boston / Bank of America doesn't meet the needs of the citizens, then the banking commissioner should do something about that. He should go on, review it, find out why it doesn't, hold hearings, and adopt rules and regulation that helps the consumer. That's what government is there to do. It's to protect the citizens. It's not a right to operate a bank in Massachusetts. It's a privilege. And if Bank of America is abusing that privilege, then let's revoke their charter. Why should they be allowed to think? I have people that disagree with me about breaking up the banks, but the Glass-Steagall Act worked for 100 years in this country. It didn't allow people from outside the state to own a bank in the state. It made the banks more responsible to local citizens who were putting the money in the bank. You have these national big corporations that have no care what happens in Taunton. They don't care what happens in Brockton. All they care about is the end profit of their return, and their money goes to somebody sitting in Manhattan. That shouldn't be the case. When banks were controlled locally, local cities and towns, they were able to determine where to lend, how the money should be spent, and the communities were better. Small businesses were loaned to. There wasn't all those rules and regulations. Bank of America now reports its own clients if they feel that they're violating anything without any probable cause to the regulators. Shame on the Bank of America. What happened about protecting your clients? They've lost the premise of helping people. The bank is owned by a bunch of thugs that are trying to take the money out of New England. The bank has had numerous lawsuits against it and settled with the government for fraudulent activities over the years. But they don't want to talk about that. They want to just find little people that do business with the bank. Senator Warren, if you're listening, you're right. Break up the Bank of America. It's too big and doesn't service the clientele. They have a little box that they want to put everybody in. Break the bank up.
That's why a lot of the local smaller banks are doing really well.
Yes.
Because of that, and I think most people are realizing that, and people are more smarter than sometimes.
Well, think about it. They're all in Manhattan. They don't even know where Main Street in Taunton is.
No local roots. They don't care.
They don't care about Taunton. They don't care about Brockton. Get their money, take it, and invest it in some high leverage thing so their salaries are $20 and $30 million.
I'm thinking about switching my bank too.
Right.
To a local bank.
Right. You think about it. They take out, I think that Joey, can you look up the salary for the Bank of America's chief executive officer? It's on the internet. I think he made $26 million last year.
That all?
$26 million of, people that put their money in that bank. And what does he do for that? He doesn't do anything for the local communities. What's the Bank of America done for Taunton? What's the Bank of America done for Quincy? What's the Bank of America done for Brockton? Taking the money out and invested it in China. Is that what we want? Local banks that invest overseas? Is that what you want?
No.
No,
Not at all.
I mean,
You got
$26 million. Do they invest in local business anymore in America? No. Do they care about the local businesses? No. They only care when the government says, well, you haven't lent enough money under the SBA Act, and they start investigating them. You know, the Bank of America and Wells Fargo, they ripped everybody off. You know what? How many of them went to jail for doing that? Wells Fargo opened up thousands of accounts and charged people millions of dollars. How many of them went to jail?
Think about what they make as far as bounce charges, too. You know, $35, $40.
And you know, when you go to England, they don't charge you. They allow you to overdraft your account. What does the public get? It's a privilege to operate a bank, not a right. When do they lend in the local community? Give me one thing that the banks do locally, these big banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America for Massachusetts. Name one thing.
I can't name one thing.
I mean, they don't respond. Santana, your bank, just had to settle hundreds of millions of dollars on fraudulent charges on car loans.
I have a car loan with it.
They ripped everybody off by making fraudulent charges.
How was that? I mean,
They were making them carry certain types of insurance through certain agencies and everything.
Really?
Why didn't somebody in the bank go to jail? If you did it, or I did it, or Tony did it, we'd be in jail. Why didn't the prosecutors prosecute the bank officials?
I think they have a lot of third-party entities as far as the car loans. They want you to work with this company and pay like a month in advance. So you're not paying the bank directly. You're paying this company, and the company pays the bank. So there's a finance fee with that.
And they're ripping the public off. And you know what? It's not their money. It's the public's money that they're lending. It's your money that you put into a savings and checking account. They take it out and make interest overnight on that money, and they lend that money. It's your money, so you have a right to say it. The banks are ripping the public off.
Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't. They don't keep an eye on their finances too. They just don't even look at their statements. There's a lot of, public's got to get more involved too, so they don't get.
You say it was your grandfather put you in charge of his money, and the bank doesn't like what you're doing. They now complain to elderly abuse thing, and you get investigated. That's nuts. You're giving them the money. They don't want it to lower. It's a rip-off of the public.
So change the bank. Ask your uncle, ask whoever to change their bank.
Right. Change the bank, break them up.
Right.
You know, the only thing they're going to think, what does the head of the Bank of Boston, Bank of America, made in salary? Can you look it up?
Brian Moynihan, he makes $23 million.
Brian Moynihan came out of the Bank of Boston and makes $23 million for what? Do you think that one human being is worth $23 million?
Show with all the fees and fines.
I mean, come on. Brian Moynihan and these bankers are ripping the public off left and right. It's legalized stealing, what they get away with. They get people elected. They hold fundraisers for congressmen in Washington that write the legislation so they can't be touched. It's legalized stealing.
You know what gets me, though? I mean, you ask a politician to break it out, and that's all fine and well, but But what else do they do? You know, it's like you ask a certain politician to do something, but then they do all these other things too that you don't agree with. If the people were just more educated and stayed on top of their finances, you wouldn't need government.
Right, but it's a privilege, not a right to operate a bank. The banking commissioner can adopt, if he adopts a rule in Massachusetts, the rule becomes statute unless the legislature overrules it. And, they'll say, they'll pull out and they won't operate here. They'll operate here because they need the money to operate. But you know what? They do illegal actions, Wells Fargo. Nobody goes to jail. They ripped off all those clients for hundreds of millions of dollars. And what happened? It was all hushed up. There was a hearing. They got yelled at. Nothing happened. They paid some fines. You know what? But they figured that in probably when they were doing it. They'd be further ahead. What they should have done is broken up Wells Fargo when it committed criminal activity. They should have removed all the directors by court order and put in a whole new group of people. But of course, that was not done. The public gets ripped off again. The public gets ripped off again. We need to make banks more accountable. We have legislative committees that should be riding roughshod over a bank. You go into Taunton and you see different things. They don't lend to the local churches anymore. They don't want them. And if a church needs a roof, they got to raise the money now. They don't want to lend to it because they don't think they might not make a profit on it. Years ago, local banks used to take care of things like that. Well, we've got out of that. And you know what? Barney Frank's legislation, the Frank-Dodd Act, hasn't been helpful. It's put more regulation. More regulation doesn't thing. I say, the best thing that will happen is when Chase moves into Massachusetts and gives Bank America competition. It's supposed to be going to happen. Let's see, Chase is now the #1 biggest bank in America. But you know what? We cannot allow the public to be continued advantage being taken on. Can you name, when you're a small businessman, Joe, you're a small businessman, you ever gone to get a loan from the bank?
Yes, I have, yeah.
And what, did they give you a hard time?
No, it was all right. I tried to stay away. It was a small loan, and I paid it right back. I just bought a piece of equipment, but I try not to go too far ahead. I try to.
In which bank did you deal with, a local or a big?
This was a while ago, and it was Abington Savings Bank at the time.
It's a local bank.
It was a local bank, but Abington Savings Bank got bought out by Sovereign, and then Sovereign got bought out by Santander, and I never jumped ship.
Right.
But I think maybe after the show, Larry, I'm thinking about leaving.
Right. You should go with a little bank because they're going to give you better service.
It's just not enough branches, and I'm all over the place. But now I noticed there was 2 Santander branches that got closed down. The one in Hull got closed down, and now all the people who live in Hull have to go to Hingham.
That's ridiculous.
Okay, and some people don't have transportation, so they got to take the bus. Actually, when I went to the they would just rebuilt the one in Hingham. It's beautiful. And I was actually talking to a woman, and she said, I had to take the bus out here. And there's like 1 bank left in Hull, or 2, Rockland Trust, and maybe another one. So everyone's just got to, anybody who lives in Hull who doesn't want to drive over to Hingham to go do their banking.
They're supposed to be a service to the public banks.
And then another one in Hanover closed down about a year ago.
Right.
On 53.
And I've seen it in Brockton. A lot of them have closed. The banks do not do anything to help the public.
Right.
I know people that have had accounts there for 60 years, and they've done nothing when they've gone in to help them. That's what they think of their clientele. I mean, they don't care. There's an arrogance. You ever try to call the 1-800 number? Maybe put on hold for 20 minutes?
Yeah,
I mean, come on. And where's the banking commission? Let's talk about Verizon for a moment. Now, if you have a problem with Verizon, there's no local offices to call, and you put on hold.
Oh.
And I had something was wrong on my account, and I called Verizon. I had to call the Telecommunications Commission to get a hold of somebody. There is no human being that answers customer service at Verizon anymore.
it just feels like they put you on hold of some phone in some hall somewhere in a vacant building.
Right, and they're not going to answer
They put you on hold and it's flashing in some.
What little business
floor
would
and it's
survive? Think about what little business that didn't have a government monopoly would survive if they did the same. If you didn't return calls, would you have any business?
No, you have to return calls. You have to follow up. You have to call people after the job and ask them if they were satisfied. You have to go through everything. You cannot miss a beat.
And let's go on. You call a credit card company, you're shipped over to the Philippines. Do you respect that credit card company?
You know what? I just got a new credit card from Citizens Bank, and I think they're awesome. They're people. I call them all the time, and they're people.
Local.
They might. Yeah, I think that. No, this lady was from Tennessee, but they wasn't shipped across seas.
I
like paying my bills over the phone.
Me too.
And they don't charge you.
If you call American Express, you get bounced to the Philippines now. American Express, the premier credit card that always customer service was
I can't
number
say
one.
Nothing bad about American Express.
I like American Express.
I love them because I always use them.
I do too.
Citizens Bank is local. They're out of Providence.
Yes.
Hey, Joey, what I was trying to get through is the Enron chief just got out of jail. I think his name is Stilling or something like that.
Did he get out of jail because
Thursday.
the sentence had run?
14 years and then 6 months in a halfway house, and he got out on Thursday.
Right. Why didn't anybody go to jail with one of the biggest banks that they ripped off the consumer? Why wasn't anybody indicted and they passed the buck? And why didn't the Federal Reserve remove those directors that didn't do their fiduciary duty at that bank? Why? Do you know what bank I'm talking about?
Lehman?
No, I'm talking about California-based bank. What is out there? I can't think.
Can't think of it either. But you say biggest bank at the time.
They can't grow anymore either. The feds put a thing. Did anybody get indicted? No. But they, it's just not a good thing when banks abuse their authority in their lending.
Oh, it's California.
They're nationwide, though. So, I mean, you wonder, what's going to transpire. If the government doesn't get hold, Donald Trump is right on some of this stuff.
He wants his money back for that bullet train that didn't work. He's looking for his full.
And I think they should get the money back.
So, the governor said no. He's like, yeah. So,
why should they get away with not paying the money back?
I think he said there's a line that they are opening. That's the governor's defense. It was for Bakersfield. It's like they call it the train to nowhere. And too bad it didn't work, because rail is a good form of transportation. But I mean, I'm sure the whole environmental study and everything, it was off the charts and costed so much money. So
Wells Fargo Bank ripped off the consumers for hundreds of millions of dollars. Why didn't anybody go to jail? Why wasn't the president of Wells Fargo Bank indicted? They fired him, but why weren't they indicted? He knew the illegal activity was going on in the bank. They were running a criminal enterprise. Why didn't any of them go to jail?
No.
Bank America, when they do go wrongdoing, why don't they go to jail? Why aren't the bankers indicted? It's time to ask the federal prosecutors, is there two systems of justice in America? One for the banks and one for everybody else? Why weren't they indicted? when Wells Fargo's car loan, when Sandana's car loan problem came up, when they ripped off the consumers $100 million, why wasn't somebody indicted?
Yeah, they're so quick to indict other people on other things. And
They indict the small guy that doesn't have the money to fight back. Large companies that will fight back, the government doesn't go after, and it's wrong. Next week we will be discussing, this is Larry Novak, the Republican voice of the South Shore, and next week we will be discussing comings and goings in the Republican Party. We will have some guests on, and I hopefully will have this up and swinging next week as to where people are polling. Believe me, when I tell you I don't support Elizabeth Warren, but she is right. And it's a growing trend showing up in polls. The public is tired of the banks. And it is a growing trend. And it's going to hit, it's going to be a major campaign issue that they want the politicians to rein in the banks. And, the average consumer gets ripped off by the banks on a regular basis. It's legalized stealing.
But good luck with that. She's too busy running for president, so we lost our senator, like Jeff Dale said.
Right. Well, we were going to lose her anyway. She was always going to run for president. And I don't think she'll go for it. I think it's an issue that did you see that Donald Trump, who's the president of the United States, private banking relation has been discussed on the front pages of the New York Times by the bank he dealt with. They're leaking stories on him. They should be investigated and shut down. That Deutsche Bank, it leaked all the stories the Times said they have come out of the internal bank discussions. What happened to bank privacy?
It was an agenda. That's all. That's all that
It's an agenda they weren't going to extend his loans. And nothing about his credit worthiness. They had decided they didn't want to extend the loans.
I don't know. There's a chance of them taking the chance doing that because it could all backfire. Who knows?
It should backfire, and the regulators should be instructing the Attorney General to investigate it.
So,
A grand jury should be impaneled to investigate the wrongdoings of these chief executives of banks.
Everyone's investigating everybody. Why not investigate the banks, right?
Right.
so to end the show today, I thought I should mention two things on this day in history. On this day in history, in 1927, President Calvin Coolidge signed a bill creating the Federal Radio Commission,
Oh, that's interesting.
the forerunner of the Federal Communications Commission. And in 1945, during World War II, U.S. Marines on Iwo Jima captured Mount Suribachi. Yep, Suribachi, where they raised two American flags. The second flag raising was captured in the iconic Associated Press photograph.